Because we're not muted yet, so as we talk in the usual way, um, if we can mute, let's leave it a minute before we start. Got Sarah. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight, as part of, or coincidentally, depending on what type, how you look at it, National Storytelling Week in the UK, I thought we should celebrate those people who managed to keep their venues going, their regular venues, through this pandemic on Zoom, and have not only kept them going, but have expanded their reach. And I want to celebrate this because I hear so much of, and quite rightly so, people can't wait to get into live venues. But I wanted to look at the positive side of what's happened, and and how people have maybe reluctantly got this going, and then found something fantastic at the end of the rainbow. So I want to hear about everyone's story, and we'll go around everyone, and they can all tell their story, and then people can ask questions. But Liz has to go because she's actually got a gig after this. I think a round of applause. Anyone who's getting paid gigs around here, yeah, they're fantastic. So we're going to start with the amazing Liz Weir. So Liz, I'm going to hand over to you and tell the story of how you moved the barn from just north of Antrim to the world.
Grand, well, thank you. It's lovely to be here. Lovely to see so many friends. I have to tell you that the last work I did with a real live audience was on the 15th of March. I can hear myself coming through in Facebook through somebody's phone, but anyway, I'll just persevere. So that was the last paid or the last live gig I did. And then I went into total decline because I live in the middle of nowhere here. Normally every Saturday night, people, neighbors, friends, and any visitors come to a live session. So I was in a real downer. And then I heard about this wonderful Zoom thing. We did a 3-hour marathon on St. Patrick's Day, and then we took it on. We had rally on Blackford. I don't know if anybody else is hearing me twice, but I'm hearing me twice. So we started then doing a virtual session, the barn session virtually. And at that, we started small with maybe about 25 people, and now we're up to usually between 70 and 80 people every Saturday night. They come from up to 12 countries. They come from all over America. So we've really expanded our horizons. It's always been a free gig, and I make no apologies for that. I do it for me as much as anything, and it seems to help people. But then, of course, I'm the storytelling residence for Libraries NI, and I was running 3 public sessions a month. And so it took me a couple of months to get going. From May on, we've been running the Lisburn, Bangor, and Tullycarnet yarn spinners every month. Our audiences vary from the smaller gigs get maybe 25, 28 up to Tullycarnet gets 102 with 44 already booked in for Colin Irwin, who's with us tonight. So that's pretty good advanced bookings for him. And that's been going really well. We've brought new people on. I think the one thing it's done is to help us develop audiences, attract people in, people who were cut off, people in their own homes, people who maybe couldn't travel to gigs. So we're getting a lot more people in. So that's a very positive. Obviously, I'm getting paid work. Amy's had me do stuff. Lots of other, I've done work for Storytelling Cafe and various other groups. So some of the work I do for free, and some of the work I do, I get paid. And the late John Campbell used to say, if there is plenty, take plenty, and if there's not, hold back. And if it was good enough for him, it was good enough for me. So that's the way I look at it. So I'm delighted to connect up with people around the world. And maybe that's all I'll say for now to let other people have a chance. I'd like to hear other people before I have to go off and work. So thank you very much, John. It's a great opportunity, especially National Storytelling Week, to have a forum where we can talk about these things. We've been having discussions on etiquette, copyright, doing professional development workshops. And I think that's one thing that we should be doing more of since we've got this capability. And that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you, Liz. You're so modest. You know, you created this amazing thing, and I know you found the whole lockdown thing very difficult at the beginning.
Dreadful. I mean, I'm used to traveling around the world. You know, I'm zooming about from one place to the other, and you know, I think I've can honestly say this sounds bad, but I've slept in about 2 beds since last March, whereas normally I sleep in a lot of beds, but I leave that. Usually hotels just to cover myself. But so it's, yeah, I've really missed the company. I've missed connecting with people. Places like the Brew House, I know you're going to have Maria talk. I mean, I was booked for that, was booked for Fate, was booked for St. Patrick's Day in Dublin. So all that. The Cape Clear, I should have said that. Obviously, I run festivals as well. So the Glen Storytelling Festival had to move totally virtually. All the videos for that are still up on Glen Storytelling on YouTube. The Cape Clear Festival had to move virtual as well. And both of those are being planned to be virtual this year as well, because it's easier actually to swap from virtual to live than it is to swap from live to virtual. So we're planning for virtual, and if we get some live gigs, that'll be a bonus. So forgot about that.
Thank you, Liz. Before we move on, has anyone got anything to say or questions for Liz? If you have, unmute yourself.
It's an easy old run.
Just to say, the barn's great. You've done such a great job. It's such a lovely space. And it just, you know, and kind of the way that it's gone completely international is fantastic.
Well, it means that, you know, we have our 89-year-old singer, Jim. We have our 86-year-old banjo mandolin player, Alec. We have the wonderful Kathleen. We have these characters, and now those characters are going out to the world. They've got fans around the world, you know, and it's so lovely. And people are wanting, I mean, I'm in the tourism business as well. The barn is a hostel, and people are saying we can't wait to get there in person. So that's one way of keeping my other business going as well. So I just love it, and those people deserve to be heard all around the world, and they are now. Thanks, Amy, for that.
Well, and that's the lovely thing as well, is that kind of like the people who would normally come to the barn usually aren't professional, and now you've got kind of, you know, world-class storytellers. And I'm not saying that your regulars aren't world class, because I think actually a lot of them are.
They are
kind of amateur and professional and kind of hobbyists. And I think that they're just having that mix and that open space that you hold, and it's you holding that space that makes it friendly and welcome. And I think it would have been really easy for maybe some of those people that you're saying that are characters that are going worldwide. It could have been very easy for them to kind of have felt overwhelmed and too timid to join in with that, and the space that you've held has just made it a really accessible place where people feel comfortable to join in.
I'll just follow up on that, and then I'll shut up and let other people talk. That has always been my ethos in storytelling. Storytelling is not a competitive sport. I mean, sometimes on Saturday nights I have some of the top best paid storytellers in the United States. That doesn't mean anything to my people that come to my session. Nobody's any better than anybody else, and I love that. I love the fact that, you know, Kathleen, who sometimes rambles, every bit as good as somebody who's this top class high flyer, only goes on international stages, doesn't cut any ice, and it never has. And when I bring people over here in reality, you know, I had Jim May, one of the top storytellers, as you know, sitting with 12 people around him in a barn. I thought he was going to be traumatized, you know, but they have to just suck it up. And I really believe that the story is what's important, not the personality. I think that's my philosophy.
And I've got to thank you, Liz, because there was a point earlier in the pandemic when you were my Saturday night out, and it was somewhere where I could go on Saturday night where I had no responsibility whatsoever. And
anybody in, John? Anybody, you know?
Yeah, anybody. I know. Any old bit of rough. And I mean, the person I've got to thank you for introducing me to is Colin Irwin down there, because you know, I mean, sometimes you just sort of, there are diamonds sitting in the middle of these sessions. Now, thank you, Liz. We'll move on to you kind of you cued the brew house really. So I think we ought to move on to Maria Watton next, and you
Hi, John.
hi.
Hiya. Yeah, I can talk a bit about the brew house. I set up Once Upon a Wednesday originally at the brew house because I kind of felt like storytelling really needs a nice space to be told. We can tell stories anywhere. We all do that. We sit around campfires, and all of that is great. But I also feel like storytelling deserves a lovely place where you can get an audience who are comfortable. I wanted to find somewhere that had a bar where someone wasn't walking in and out, getting the bucket of coal for the bar next door, and where people were chatting all the time. That really irritates me because I believe that the storyteller and the story deserves respect. And I wanted a space where you could actually have like more like 30, 40, 50 people in. So it was still cozy, um, but people were comfortable, and they could mill about, and they could get an alcoholic drink from the bar because it's a grown-up space, and they could have good cake. I had a friend who, I think Liz will remember this, who every week, Denise would come with these huge cakes that we'd sell them, but they were absolutely gorgeous, and the whole thing gave the audience a very special feeling. Because I think the thing is, we as the organisers have to promote storytelling as an art form in the best way we can, because quite often it's the poor relation of the arts, and we have to try and get paid gigs for storytellers. That was my aim. I wanted the best storytellers I could find, and I've still got a long list ahead of me. You will be coming, you guys. I set it up it must be about 3 years ago now, a year of which has virtually been the pandemic. Um, but so I wanted to create a space where the stories and the storyteller were respected, paid, and so on. Now, I built an audience, people who wanted to come. I wanted to create a space for people who wanted to, floor tellers, so that they got opportunities to tell as well. And so when the pandemic hit and our lovely, gorgeous club with all that brilliant stuff going on had to stop. I was inspired by Liz setting up online, and I just set up Once Upon a Wednesday online, and instead of once a month, every Wednesday. And I think it's been really great because we've created a community, and so people come back regularly. I think what I've seen is that the people who sometimes are quite quiet storytellers, in sort of like, in the real world, in the ether, have really benefited from this format, because you can hear them more clearly, and the camera can. Some people are just really great at the camera. I'm not. I'd rather be standing in front of a group of live people, but some people have really responded to that. They know how to use lighting, they know how to tell a story. At Liz's barn session on Saturday, Gary Cordingley was rocking it. Absolutely brilliant. The way he used the camera, I felt like I learned something from him. So I wanted to keep my audience on, and I wanted my audience to remain engaged. I wanted more people gradually to have access to more storytelling. Um, so it's going from strength to strength, and we have more people coming from all around the world. We've made friends all around the world. We have regulars from all around the world now, and still our original Once Upon a Wednesday audience. And every single week, I get emails, texts from people saying, thanks, because this gets me through this hideous time. So I feel I feel good about that. That we are holding a space for stories, even if it's virtual. I too am going to shut up now. Oh, you need to unmute, John.
So I saw someone had a T-shirt, and on one side it said mute, and on the other side it said unmute, and they turned around. I just thought that was great.
Yeah.
I think, there's people on here that know my workshops now forever telling me to mute or unmute. So Maria, that was amazing. And it's, I mean, I've been to you virtually. It's years since I've been to you in reality, but I will
You
be.
used to come and work here. I mean, you used to stay with us loads, didn't you, John? And we did work together in Lichfield, and you know, we go way back. We did a lot. We even did stuff in Orrowus, didn't we?
We did.
Create, you know. So yeah, when we're back to reality, you know, you've got to come to Once Upon a Wednesday.
And I live nearer now. Well,
Yeah,
but like Liz, you know, we don't live anywhere, do we? We kind of. I camp here. I camp in Swindon, but there's, you know, it's kind of like I come here to pick up the post virtually, or I did. Now my postman doesn't know what's happening because my post box is emptied with regularity. So, anyone got any questions from her or comments, or want to praise her and tell her how wonderful she is? Dave, you're going to be in trouble if you don't.
Yeah, hi John. Hello everyone. Yeah, I think the Once Upon a Wednesday is an excellent idea. It's I think it gives everyone a lift every week for that, and Maria, I think, hosts it really well. It's feels very similar to Liz's Saturday night in that it's very kind of well, kind of almost like a chat. You know, do you know what I mean? Rather than a performance, it's actually a discussion. What I always liked as well is Maria will talk to the storytellers and ask about the story and the background to it, and so it kind of reveals something of the storyteller as well.
It's really. Could I just follow that up, Dave? Because I think the host is the key. I think good hosting is the key. I've been on sessions at other places, not mentioning any of them, and none of the people that are on here tonight, and some of the hosting has been atrocious. So I think even more when you're on Zoom and so on, a good MC is very, very important.
Well, it's just, and Dave picked up the thing that it's, you know, these sessions have, they make people feel good. Yeah, and that's kind of a bit more important. It's always good to have the audience walking out feeling, you know, feeling sort of like they're walking on air or something, and want to talk about things anyway. But you know, it's even more important to, you know, it's kind of our job in some ways to lift the spirits, I think, at the moment. And certainly Liz and Maria have done that with these fantastic sessions they've been running. I'm going to move across to before I come to my beautiful East Anglia, which I miss terribly. I'm going to go to Amy, as because she's done something quite different, but she's kept its. But she's managed to get, you know, to keep things going.
It's not that different, but it is, yeah. I suppose my storytelling club is a different sort of club. So I run a club called Blast, Beautiful Lies and Startling Truths. And when I set it up, it was purely selfish. I live right in the sticks, in a little town in Shropshire, and for me to get out and hear high quality storytelling is difficult, or at least it was before lockdown. It was usually a case of having to go to sort of Birmingham, or, you know, I might be lucky and be able to go to Shrewsbury or Oswestry, but it would usually be at least an hour, often more. And and being able to get there in time and having somebody else to look after the kids, being able to get back, it would be late and I'd have to still get up with the kids. And it was really difficult to do. So there is a little storytelling club in Bishop's Castle, but it's very small where people share stories, but it used to be like 5 or 6 people round a table and that would be it. So I wanted a performance storytelling club. So we, and I was starting from scratch. I mean, Bishop's Castle is not a storytelling place. So my usual audience don't have a lot to do with storytelling apart from Blast. And again, like the Brew House, we wanted a lovely place, so it's at the town hall. There are alcoholic drinks available, but actually for us, kind of quite a big thing was that it wasn't in a pub, because I think different people come to a space that isn't a pub, and that can sometimes be a bit overwhelming. We do have a lot of older women who come on their own, and actually, although there's beer and wine, people drink tea generally, and cake is a really important thing about Blast. Cake is probably more important than the storytelling, or at least as important. They go hand in hand. And yeah, when lockdown came, we actually just snuck in, and because it's usually only a winter series that I do. I normally go from September to March, and so our last performer wasn't able to come because they were ill, actually not COVID, and we just managed to do the last one, and it was just on the verge of lockdown. People were coming in with plastic gloves and with coins that had washed and things, but they did come, and then that was it. I wasn't going to do anything, but I had a talk with Janet Dowling, and we were talking about storytelling online. And at that point, lots of people were saying and thinking that you couldn't sustain long stories online. There seemed to be the thing that kind of you do 10, 15 minutes, and that was like a max. In fact, a lot of stories about 5 minutes. And I was desperate for some meat, and for some of those longer stories. And also talking to Janet, she kind of really helped just talking it through. I realised that a lot of the people that come to my club are women who live on their own, who weren't going to be going out, who were kind of maybe some of the people who were most at risk from COVID, who were going to be in self-isolation, and who would never have been online before, but now might be willing to try. And it just felt really important actually to have that community space, and also to provide some paid work for storytellers, because everybody's work suddenly vanished. And actually, if you keep things live, then there's no reason that you can't have a storyteller come round to local clubs who are supporting their own local community. So yes, other people can come from anywhere in the world, but actually there's a space to keep those contacts from the real world going as well, and that you could tour storytelling clubs online in the same way, ideally, that you would not in the real world, but in the physical world. And so we gave it a go, and I really wasn't sure if it would work, particularly kind of with sustained stories, because we have 2 45-minute halves. It's usually kind of, they're quite long pieces, and it has worked, and we have kind of kept that community going. We've managed to keep the cake going to a certain extent, so quite often there's a suggested recipe that people can have a go at making. We all share what we're eating and what the snacks are. We're not snackist, so people bring a whole range of things. Liquid cake seems to become quite popular. So lots of people bring that, and we did a summer season. We say we don't normally work in the summer, but and it just has been a real joy to do, and the people that I've met and the connections that people have made through the club have just been absolutely inspirational. So it's been fantastic. Did you want me to talk about other stuff as well, John, or should I just shut up now for a bit? They shut himself up instead.
No. You're allowed to rattle on for as long as you like, Amy, because whatever you're talking about is interesting to everyone here. So please talk about it.
Well, I suppose the other things that I've been doing. I mean, I know that Maria and Liz have been doing lots of other things online, but I do 3 regular monthly things. So there's Blast. But I mean, I was really lucky when lockdown happened, because I'd having been not involved digitally with anything for a very long time. I was in the middle of an Arts Council bid where I was specifically trying to do more things online and come to grips with what social media is and how to use it. I've kind of come to that conclusion that I needed to be on social media for work, and that everybody does. And if I was going to have to do that, I didn't want just lots of pictures of me outside gigs saying, hello, and here I am with my cup of tea about to do another gig, which I think all of us have been guilty of at some point. And social media is flooded with that. And I found myself starting to do that and going, oh, this is not the person I want to be. But but I could see that there was possibilities online of conversations and of going a little bit deeper. And I think sometimes as storytellers, we're really bad at sharing our own story. And I love art galleries, but I know very little about visual art. And for me, if I've got a guide, if I've got somebody who's passionate about an artist, who tells me about them, who's inspired by the work, and then takes me to see those paintings, and I know something about where that artist was coming from, it brings it alive for me. And I think that there's a place for maybe exploring that as storytellers as well. So I was in the middle of starting to do podcasts on that with other storytellers, mostly about Duncan Williamson, who's a fantastic Scottish traveller storyteller who's my mentor, and he was a big part of my Arts Council project that we maybe won't go into here. And I didn't think you'd be able to do podcasts online because I thought the sound would be dreadful. And actually now I know that there are ways of overcoming that, and I'm working on that. So I started a thing called Taking the Tradition On, which was once a week and has now gone to once a month, which is me talking with the storyteller about their stories, why they tell what they tell, how they got into storytelling, what inspires them. And again, most of what I do is really selfish. It's all the conversations that I've been wanting to have that you never seem to find time to have unless you make a really specific space for that. So I would be quite happy if nobody came, because I'd still get to have those conversations, but you know, kind of, you're all welcome to come and eavesdrop and join in and ask questions as well. And that's been a revelation actually, and it's just been it's just basic storytelling chat show, and it's been an absolutely fantastic thing to do. And I think just all of those spaces, everybody's come on together, and what's been a real blessing of this time is the fact that we're all doing it together. And I think we've all kind of learned quite a lot and got more professional now, but certainly at the beginning, we all made some mistakes and disasters and catastrophes and everything else, and had everything go down on us. But everybody's been really forgiving because we've all been doing it hand in hand, all at the same time, all learning, all progressing, and that joint learning and that joint kind of adventure and sort of pioneering, and it's great because we can be a pioneer here, and there really is nobody else here. We're not treading on anybody's toes. It's a kind of, we can have a proper adventure without having to go into somebody else's space. It's a completely new space, so that's just been incredibly exciting.
Thank you, Amy. And before I open up and people can ask questions, and please do ask questions or comments about Amy, I want to go back to Maria, because you opened up the podcast box, and Maria also has been running podcasts. So would you care to talk a little bit about your podcasts, and then we'll go back to talk to Amy and stuff?
Yeah, the podcasts came about because my daughter moved back with us. Maya came back to live with us with her partner, James. And James is a videographer, and he does that kind of work all the time. And it was James who suggested it to me, a person who is completely untechnical and really bad at anything digital. And he very painstakingly taught me how to do it and made me make notes so that I knew how to do it. And I learned a lot by actually doing it. Like Amy was just saying, we've all learned, I think, we've all become more accustomed to this form. But it also gave me an opportunity to interview Liz, for example, and have that as a kind of archive, because obviously Liz's work is extraordinary. I wanted to talk to you, for example, John, because there's a particular form of writing poetry that you do, and you're the only person I know who really does it like you do it. And I really genuinely wanted to discuss that and explore that with you. And it was an opportunity also to record stories so people could listen to stories or think about stories. And weirdly, as these things happen, I got a writing commission from Historic England, and they had wanted, I didn't realise this at the time when I got the commission, because it was to write a short story, wanted to make that into a podcast. And the absolutely interesting thing there was when they suddenly phoned me up and went, "We're in another lockdown and we can't use the recording studio. I knew how to do it from home. And James did help me. I did. That sounds like I'm really, I've become all massively technical. James did help me but I didn't feel so overwhelmed by that at all. And I knew it was possible, and I knew that the quality would be good. So that comes out on the 10th of February, just saying, folks, for you to listen to. So there's been a lot of learning, I think, and in that sense, it's been really positive.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, I hate to use the term old dogs, but there is a lot of new tricks being learned there. So, and anyone, either Maria or questions or comments to Amy in particular? Well, I cut out really. David, you've got something.
That Amy, that is amazing over that our auditory that is amazing. Look back, but over that man be good at the amazing and
it is truly amazing what they're doing, and that archive looking back would be it's fantastic. I'm going to move across to his. Pardon?
I said thanks, David. And it just to say, it's not just, it is that thing of not just moving things online, because in this new space, it's been great to be able to put new things out there. So I mean, sort of taking the tradition on and blast are kind of both sort of things that have moved across. But it's also the other thing that has been a really interesting thing to do is to get a word in Edgeways online concerts, and just having that space to kind of work out what concert is online, and not just trying to put like a concert from a physical space and just transfer it over, because it is, everybody goes, oh, it's not the same as real life and the physical life, and it's not. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at all. It's a different thing. And I don't know about Maria and Liz, but I mean, that's the thing, is if, hopefully we're all going to get the vaccine. Hopefully we're all going to be absolutely fine. Hopefully we can all go back and do the things that we used to do. But I'm hoping that everybody is going to carry on with these things as well, because I mean, certainly for me, gosh, when I was pregnant and breastfeeding at 3 o'clock in the morning, if I'd been able to go to a storytelling concert in the States instead of watching flipping Star Trek, I would have been over the moon. And having those options, I just think is fantastic. And it's definitely been like a sea change in my work, and I'm going to carry on with this, whatever happens to what we're allowed to do. Right, sorry, Hannah, I'm going to let you talk now.
Well, yeah, I'm going to go. Well, we'll be better let Hannah go on. She's been waiting. I mean, that's for me. When lockdown happened, I spent most of my life in East Anglia, in Essex, Suffolk, and Norfolk, and I leave family over there, so I've always got somewhere to keep. And there's all these lovely little storytelling clubs around that would just, and I'd say, if I could put a few bookings together, do a bit for Hannah, a bit for Shane, a bit for Justine up in Woodbridge, and the locks and everything, it would be fantastic. And then lockdown happened, but Hannah, Justine has kept hers going. I know Shane's done some stuff, but Hannah's been working all sorts of stuff. And so Hannah, would you like to tell us your Zoom journey?
Oh, thank you, John. Well, I suppose WordSpun, which is the event that I run, started off. I'm in Southend-on-Sea in Essex, and for me, in my part of Essex, there was no storytelling. there are Leon C storytellers, and that's much more a bit like Amy described. They're a small group who meet around a coffee table, and they tell stories and share tea. But there was nothing that was really showing professional storytellers, and there was no platform for that at all in Southend. Obviously, Shane was running things in Chelmsford, and then the further north you were going, so huge scene in Suffolk and Norfolk, but certainly for South Essex, where I was, there was nothing. And there's a huge poetry scene where I am, huge comedy, huge music scene, and I just felt that it was sad that there wasn't anything for storytelling. So I set Word Spun up, and we just operated out of a very small, we moved around, we had to try and find a good space, and we finally found a wonderful space in Leigh-on-Sea, in the Fisherman's Chapel, which was just a beautiful space. And a bit like everyone's described, it was just that wonderful space where you're not being interrupted, because we had tried pubs, just disaster. And yeah, it was just the perfect space. And the way that I wanted to have Word Spun really was to have sort of East Anglian storytellers in sort of the first half, and then the second half, very much we would try and invite people so that people would get an idea of, the wealth of storytellers out there. But obviously, we're in Southend. It's quite hard to get people to come over because people are very busy. And as you've said, John, it's about having to organise your time. So maybe you can hit lots of different places at once, which makes it worthwhile you coming. And so we were just sort of gathering momentum, and we'd got a really loyal set of supporters who came in sort of so I did every other month, because it was, I've got a family, so it was just a way of actually facilitating that as well. And then obviously lockdown happened. We'd had quite a few events planned, and so that all went. And I hadn't originally intended to go online, to be really honest with you, but it was one of the regulars that came to Word Spun, and they said, have you thought about going online? I was like, no, not really, because I'm also technically not very good. But I said, okay. And they said, well, we'd really like to. We're shielding, we're stuck inside. We've been to some online things, not storytelling, but they've been to some other online things. And they said, we just would really love it. Would you give it a go? So I'm so pleased Sarah is here tonight, because thanks to Sarah and lovely Dave Tong and a couple of other people, and lovely Peter Monk, who's another local storyteller near me, I said, do you want to give it a go? Should we just try this Zoom thing that nobody'd ever heard of? And Janet Dowling again, who'd been using Zoom, she gave some tips about things to think about. And she's been a wonderful help, actually, Janet. She's been a real, source to go to if you need to know anything about, the Zoom or these technical things. And Sarah came, and we had a go, and it went down well. But the one thing I realised quite early on, and I'm really pleased that Sarah took on the mantle to do something weekly. And I've got a daughter at home, and my energy levels and everything were really low. I really struggled when everything closed. And I just thought to myself, I can't do this weekly. I cannot do this weekly. And thank goodness Sarah decided that she would do it weekly instead. And I also knew quite quickly, actually, after the first couple, that whereas the first one I'd told as well as hosted, I actually thought, you know what, I don't want to do that. I just want to invite storytellers, and I just want to host, because a bit like Amy said, it's also a massive pleasure to just be able to get some of your favourite storytellers in a room, a virtual room, and sit there and listen. And for me, the thing that I really learned very quickly, And I admire everybody, and I know Sarah tells every now she's monthly, but Sarah told every week, and I absolutely admire anybody who can do both, because I just realized for me, I was never really giving the best as a storyteller, because I was concentrating on hosting and making sure things were going okay, and if there was a dropout and things, and actually I just wanted to listen to other storytellers. It wasn't about me, it was about giving that opportunity to regular audience members to be able to engage with storytellers that I could never get to my events in Southend. You know, I could only dream of getting. And I've just had such amazing storytellers, and I'm so thankful. Liz has told, Colin's told, John's told, and anyone here who'd like to come, Maria, Amy, if you'd like to come and tell, do come and tell. But also I wanted it to be an event, so I wanted to have a lineup of storytellers. So, because there's so many good storytelling clubs who've gone online and have that, and the Barn, for example, all of those events where people have that chance to just get up and tell. And I just wanted to do something a bit different, where actually, partly selfishly, so I could get to listen to storytellers I wanted to listen to, but also because I just wanted to make it more of an event feel. And one of the things we always did anyway at WordSpun, we always had to charge our audience to come, because we had rent to pay on the venue. So we've always charged. And so going on Zoom, I know there's been a lot of discussion about whether you should charge or whether you shouldn't charge. And we make it donation, because I don't want to stop anybody coming. All of us, you know, are in different financial positions. Some people have managed to maintain their jobs, some people haven't. And I didn't want it to be exclusive, that if you didn't have the money, you couldn't come. And especially for people in other countries, because actually facilitating that whole thing about exchange rates and all of that. So we make it donation, which is, I know, something, you know, not everybody thinks, but that way people can come and pay if they want to. And all the money is split between the tellers. I don't take anything for hosting. And I can't pay people huge amounts of money, but at least I can give them something for their time. So yeah, that's my sort of, that's me really. So there.
Yeah, and I was really grateful for the few quid that came in. It came in at a really good time. Thank you, Anna. Now,
it's the generosity of our audience.
Yeah, bless your audience's hearts. And now it would be really rude if after you've name dropped her, if we didn't bring Sarah in to tell her story, and then maybe people can ask questions of both of you and comment on both of you as you're sort of linked in that sort of. Well, those A roads spin off the 25s, and so Sarah, would you care to give us your story?
Oh, my story is I made a mistake. I said I'd go online every week. Good God, that was mad. Who said that? I think it was just my panic that I'd never storytell live again, and that was it. I just thought, well, we have to do something, and I was really lucky that people kept saying, "Oh yes, we'll come back and tell a story next week." Well, there are people out there who'll tell stories. Woo! And there's an audience who'll listen. I think it's really interesting that there are people who say, "I have never been able to get to see storytelling. I've got problems, I have to stay at home, I've got somebody I look after, or I've got an illness." And that is something that I hadn't expected, that there is going to be an audience still sitting there at home when we finished. And I think we've got to think about that. That is something that's really interesting. I think the reaching out around the world, I think that has been incredible. Working with people that you don't know, working closely with people that you've never actually met. I work with Maria, who's from Lichfield, and I've never met her in real life. Now that is quite strange. So yes, as a performer, I've always thought you say yes, and then you do the how the hell am I going to do it, and that's what happened. We were there that first week with Hannah, and I thought, well, we've got to do it next week, and Hannah's going, I don't think I can do it. I don't. And I just said, right, well, I'll do it. And I didn't realise. I thought it would be 4 weeks. How many weeks later are we? We're doing every 2 weeks, every second Wednesday now. And I still tell. I think there's only been 1 week when I haven't told. And that's about challenging myself. And also, as the host, I find it easier if I tell the first story, then I'm the one who has all the people coming in and out. So technically, I don't have that awkwardness that people who turn up late and everything for the first teller, it's not such a good house. So that's why I still tell, I think. But, and also I would never, we wouldn't have done the World Storytelling Cafe, which is wonderful. I wouldn't have seen other people that I've seen. So the digital world is incredible. I mean, I've popped into Amy. I've seen Amy's talking about things, and that was a great evening. I haven't been to Liz, and I haven't been to Maria. Maria's on a Wednesday. That might not happen. But, it is incredible. Thank you. Thank you for opening the door.
One thing I was going to say, John, is following on from what Amy said and Sarah, is this thing about what happens in the future. And actually, WordSpun is going to stay virtual. We do other events anyway in the area, and we'll still do those. But WordSpun itself isn't going to go back to a space, partly because that space, very sadly, doesn't exist anymore. And I just think there'll be a need. There'll still be a need. There's lots and lots of people that we've reached that we would never have reached before, not just in this country, but as you say, people who like I couldn't get to storytelling gigs. I've got a family, and so I think it's important that there's still a space going forward. So that's what we've decided to do.
I thoroughly agree with that, because one of the ironies is that although I live in East Anglia, I haven't got down to Southend, and I didn't get up to Ipswich for a long time because I'm most of the time dependent on public transport. That's why I can't get to those places. And now I'm able to hear them, which is wonderful. So I hope they're going to continue doing that. I'm very much in favour of it. Yes, that's a grand idea.
I'm just messaging Ali. Can you hear me? I can't even see World Storytelling Cafe up there at the moment. Oh, you're in, Justine. Bless you. I'm here. Okay. Now, Justine, I keep saying people are going to ask Hannah and Sarah questions, but Justine is here for 10 minutes before she has to go and kill a teenager or deal with some other child.
Actually, 10 minutes before I have to put on more makeup to go and host one of these things that we're talking about. So
quickly, you're in 2 minutes flat, or 10 minutes, or how long you're here for. Tell us about your journey into Zoom from regular venues.
Okay, so, well, do you know what? So our first Zoom night was a Taps and Tales night, and 2 days before we thought we were being live, and suddenly there was all this lockdown. And John, if you remember, the night before, I think it was me, you, and Baden and Shane trying out Zoom for the first time, which was the most hilarious night, because half the time we were on Messenger, and then I think Shane and Baden found filters, so they were just being dragons, which was really unhelpful. It was like typical storyteller, but so eventually we worked out how Zoom worked, and then I think the next night we had Taps and Tales, which is now Tales and Tunes, featuring the awesome Baden Prince, and it went all right, actually. It was okay. So it was kind of a trial by fire, really. And then basically that's what we've been doing ever since. And then my I have nights that are kind of music and storytelling, so those went online as well. And it's been really interesting to kind of go on that journey. I think I was hearing just caught the end of what Jan was saying. I think the accessibility thing, there are people that are coming to my sessions now that wouldn't have come before, because, you know, for whatever reason, for, you know, like me, they've got kids screaming in the background, or, you know, or like the transport thing, or actually, you know, maybe sort of, so I'm autistic, as many of you know, and often sometimes with autists, we find it hard to just get the energy and the spoons together to be there. So being able to be online has meant that people can access it that wouldn't normally. And I'm very much hoping that we can continue that when we go back live. So I think it's made a lot of us, I think, rethink what it means to be accessible and the different ways that we can be accessible, and actually that we have the technology to do that now. So if we can, we should. Yeah, and also, so from a personal point of view, when I went to drama school all those years ago and I learned about TV acting, and I've never had a chance to use it until now, and now I'm like, oh, I've got a frame and I can put things in the shot, and it's really actually using some skills that I had that I had just gone onto the back burner. So that's quite exciting as well. I quite like it as a form. You can kind of play around with it. So yeah, that's my 2-minute spiel.
Great. Well, has anyone got any questions, comments, or anything else for Hannah, Sarah, or Justine? Or all three?
What's the worst thing you've done to keep your children quiet while you're online then, Justine?
There's been sweets, there's been threats, a lot of threats, to be honest, just a lot of threats. You know? I think that, honestly, and no, that's it. Threats and treats, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and has been quite a lot of threats and bribery gone on over here.
It's difficult to say, and sometimes you kind of think, oh, they'd like to be involved, but actually if they're involved, I'm then having both hats on, and just doesn't work, you know. So yes, no, I think threats and bribery have been the method. If anyone has any better methods, please do share, but that's what's worked for me.
Yeah, I was hoping you might have some for me, actually. Though I have to get a shed. I'm very lucky to have a shed in the garden, so I can go and hide.
Yeah,
and if they join in, it's on a separate computer in a separate building.
Justine's got a camper on her front, in front of her house. I think she hides in there.
It's too cold this time of year. Otherwise, I'd be there.
Okay. I get it about that Adobe.
Oh, something went crunch at the end there, David. How can we involve what? Sorry, it just went funny at the end.
I get it about
I think if you, David, if you're asking about Justine's venue, it's if you look on Facebook, Tapas and Tales.
Tales and Tunes now, John, you're behind.
Oh, so, God, answer your own question.
So, David, we have 2 Facebook groups. There's Tales and Tunes, which is the kind of storytelling focused one. So if you look up Tales and Tunes, it's tail like an apostrophe N and then another apostrophe tunes. And then the other one, which is more music focused, but like I say, stories and music are welcome in both, is Busking Nights with Lady J. So if you look up both of those, it should have the links in there. In the chat, yes, absolutely.
I was just about to suggest the same thing. Will we be able to access the chat of this afterwards? Will you be able to save it?
Well, I think you can. I think what happens, it goes on your computer, and I've never worked out how to do this, but you can save the chat after the thing, but I'm not quite sure.
You have to do it before it closes, and if you look in the chat, there's a little thing that says file. So down there, it has save chat just next to file. I'm hoping.
I just wondered if other people wanted it afterwards. I don't know if there was somewhere to sort of put it up and have it accessible.
There's No, I think they're going to have to go with their visual, with the verbal stuff.
I'm hoping
unless-
those are right.
Unless if someone wants to save it for me, because I have I'm trying to do too much here until everyone is.
Right. I've saved it up to that point, so.
Okay, well, say,
Message me later.
and if someone can send it to me in a Word thing, I can probably get it up in the World Storytelling Cafe somewhere. I haven't worked this out, but I'll do that. Well, anyone else? And while they're asking, I've got to really apologise. It will take me 2 seconds, but I can smell where I haven't turned the saucepan down properly for all this. And there's kind of like my dinner is going to be slightly charred at the bottom if I'm not really careful. So I'll be with you in 2 seconds. So please talk amongst yourselves for a minute. And if anyone else who runs things online would like to chip in about what they do, that'd be, if you have to disappear, Justine, before I'm back, thank you for coming on for your 2 seconds.
You're very welcome. I've already got another 2 minutes. I might see you, but might not.
I was just going to ask you guys who also host. I've made a decision about when I'm hosting Once Upon a Wednesday not to record the sessions because so many different people have different views on that. So far I haven't done that, but I was wondering what you thought about that, because on the one hand it can be great to archive, as I know John does a lot of that, but I also know that so many people feel that might be something that they regret later or would rather be paid for, or I don't know, it just brings up so many issues. I decided I'm just going to keep it live every Wednesday night, and we had Daniel Morden on a couple of weeks ago, and he was obviously paid for that. But Daniel was very clear that he did not want it recorded, and I said that's fine because we never record. Have any other people got views on that?
We record occasionally if somebody wants it. Sometimes the teller is saying, "It's a new story. Are you going to record tonight?" And we've had also people who've said, "My friends can't see it. Can they have a recording?" So it's on that sort of basis that I've done it.
Well, this is
so it's not every week, and it's for different reasons. But I do understand this thing. It's difficult, isn't it? It's what are you going to use it for, and where are you storing it? I think.
Yeah, I mean we do, but only I ask all the storytellers. So
yeah,
if one of those storytellers says no, I don't want it recorded, then it won't be recorded. But one of the reasons I do it, A, is to archive it. It's not shared anywhere. The only time it's ever been shared is with our regular people who might not be able to come to that session because they want to go to some other storytelling session or something else that might clash. But they always pay for their the privilege of having it afterwards, because actually it's quite a lot of work to download it and send it to them. And that money, I also feel, okay, if you want to see the session, then that means that the tellers get that money. So and that's helped Australia. Actually, we have a lady who has joined us a couple of times from Australia, but she has to sort of get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. So for her, she's asked a couple of times, and she doesn't ask every time, so she doesn't get a recording every time. But sometimes she says to me, "Oh, I really wanted to see that teller, but I just can't get. I can't get up this morning. Could you please send me the recording?" So, but if a storyteller who's at that night says to me, "I don't want it recorded," I wouldn't record it.
Yeah,
but no one said no so far.
Yeah, I suppose just to come. So all of mine are they're Facebook live streamed, and the live stream stays up on the page unless somebody asks me to take it down. So but my nights are slightly different. I think if like with Tales and Tunes, we have a featured teller for that slot, and if they don't want me to record that bit, then I don't. But basically everybody coming to my nights knows that they are Facebook live streamed, and that the live stream then stays on the page, or like either on my timeline or in the group timeline, so either Tales and Tunes or Busky Nights with Lady J. For me, it's about accessibility. And I say my nights are slightly different because it's not all professional tellers, so it's an open mic night, and actually it's about people being able to share with as many people as they want, and sometimes that's the only recording they've got of themselves. So it's not professionally recorded, and it's not separated out. It's so that you can experience the night if you can't be there at the time. So far, no one's asked me not to. And I say, for me, it's about accessibility. But I think you just have to be sensitive. As I say, people know that my nights are Facebook live streamed, and the live stream stays in the group so that other people can watch it.
And
yeah, carry on.
Some people just want it up for a certain time. And I mean, at the cafe, we just say, tell us, and we'll just take it down from everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that's come across with this whole Zoom thing is that we have people from across the world are taking an interest, and you're forever dealing with different time zones. So it's quite nice if people from a different time zone can actually get there without watching at 4 o'clock in the morning or something. But it's always up to the artist.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting question though, and it's really tied in with kind of should it be live or recorded? And I'm getting a little bit more, the whole question of space and how you hold space online has been something I found really interesting. And I felt really strongly at the beginning that sort of certainly Blast and Get a Word in Edgeways would just be live, and it's a proper event. It's not telly. It's not something you can just like flick through on YouTube. If you want to come, then you come, and you're there at the beginning. And if you come in late, then you've missed the beginning. And it's like we're all sat in the same space at the same time, and you might not be able to see each other because I know most people are kind of on this format, and what we do is webinar, so you don't get to really see the rest of the audience, but you can talk to them on the chat, and it's all in live time, and how that changes the space I think is quite interesting. So I have started recording them, and I'll send them but just to the artist over WeTransfer afterwards if they want to, and occasionally so that I can get some screenshots so that I can like put those up, because it's just it's one more thing to do when you're live, and so. But we haven't shared the recordings, and I think people do view it in a different way if they think they can just rock up later. And I know that quite like Lichfield do that they kind of, you can buy a ticket, and if you can't make it, you can sort of watch it for a week afterwards on record. I don't know, I never do. I always mean to. I think, oh yeah, I can't get to that, I'll watch it later. I never ever do. But if it's a certain time and I know that's it, and I turn up then, and it feels different definitely as a listener and a watcher if I'm doing it with other people at the same time. And there's just, it is that unseen thing that we all know as performers, that you can hold that space, and that space is a real physical thing that you can feel, even if you can't touch it or see it. And it does, and I don't think it's work over online, but you can hold that even if it's going internationally. It's still a real electricity about that for me. But I mean that, but at the same time I do record taking the tradition on, and that's that there as an archive, and I think that is really nice to have that as an archive. So I've tried both, but it's something that I'm definitely still thinking about and playing with, just that whole notion of how you hold the space, and that difference between live and record, which is really interesting.
I think that's part of the reason I sort of asked for tonight, was because to actually show that there's an enormous numbers of what like if you were running live stuff physically, you'd choose the venue according to your vision for the for what you're doing, also on availability. Likewise, there's as many different approaches to Zoom clubs as there are to anything else.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I have to go to mine. So
well, bye. Have a great night, Justine.
See you later.
Bye, Justine. I need to
Really?
go.
Have you got to go too?
I need to go. let everybody know on Monday doing World Campaign, and then up midday.
I'm really looking forward to that, David. It's our regular connecting the world by story. I haven't talked about the cafe tonight because it was a different subject, but tomorrow night, and this is really important, we've got on the Connect the World with Stories. We've got David it's David's night, and it's being supported with Jackie Ross and Paro's coming on. Paro Nand, I think, is coming on. But it's Stories of Hope. The theme was David's, and David has taken it and run with it, and I'm really looking forward to it tomorrow night. So we'll see you tomorrow night, David.
One more. Everybody wonder. Go on Monday to get the doing about hope.
So that's an open invitation for people to come with their stories of hope.
Thanks, David, and thank you for all of the support and the things that you've come to, because you've been a real stalwart. So thank you.
Yeah.
One more. Me, I will get involved. Like story that everybody need know what is doing. That don't it really good for everybody. Doesn't everybody always get that what doing over.
Bye, David.
Bye, David.
David, great to have you on, and thank you for your support of stuff of Zoom across the world, and you've supported so many different people's venues by turning up, and it's been brilliant. Thank you, David.
Do not want to really get together. Bye.
Bye.
Justine, before we move on, because you've sort of heard from us about it, how are you feeling about sort of live and recorded and keeping things now? What conclusions have you come to? Sorry, I said Justine and I meant Maria. I'm losing the plot. I'm really sorry, Maria.
Join the club.
I'm so sorry, Maria. I looked at you, I thought your name, the wrong thing came out.
Ask me again.
Yeah, no, it's just because you sort of heard from all of us now about kind of the live and recorded, and you asked the question. So I was just really interested where you're at with that and what your conclusions are.
I think there is no right or wrong, except for, I think, you do need to be ethical about it and ask the storytellers who are taking part. That would be the only thing I say. I think there are benefits in recording, and there are also benefits in just keeping it live and of that moment. And one of the benefits in just keeping it live for me and of the moment is, for example, when people are trying stories out. One of the things that they do when they come to Once Upon a Wednesday is usually they're brilliant anyway, but it might be a lot of people will say, this is the first time I've told this story, and they're carving it out in the air in that moment, and they're using the space to craft it. And I don't think they particularly welcome having that recorded, because it is part of a process. And so I feel, that's one of the positives of keeping it live. On the other hand, of course, you may miss something if you don't record it. So I can see that there are, I think you as the host actually need to make those judgments.
Yeah, if it's set up before that this is how it works, but if you don't want to, or I mean, in our case, we take things down because, you know, there's some people only want stuff up for a certain amount of time. Some people want it up forever. Hannah's got to go because she's got a family quiz night.
Be in trouble if I don't
Like
go.
she's got a life she's got a life beyond this screen. How
Anytime
dare
I
you?
see my mum, so I have to go. But I was just one point I was going to say on that, John, is that I also asked the audience and make the audience aware. But we only started recording from the summer onwards, so it's quite a recent thing. And in that time, we've only actually shared a video, like sent us video not to a storyteller who might want it 3 times, I think, and they're people who come regularly. So, but yeah, I think it is all about. It's about respect, isn't it, and asking the people involved. That's what I think. But anyway, it has been fascinating, and it's been so lovely to meet you, Maria and Amy. And my big aim over the next few months while we're still in lockdown is I have actually heard Amy's and Keeping the Tradition and everything, but I'm really hoping to be able to get to Blast and Maria's Wednesday night as well, in between Sarah's, because otherwise I'd be in trouble with Sarah. So. But thank you so much, and hope to see you all somewhere virtually soon.
Thank you. And we've got a few people on here that do not, as far as I know, but they might do, run stuff on, move their stuff on Zoom. Have you anything you want to say to our 3 remaining hosts that we've got on here?
Can I say something, John? I'll keep it very short. It's Maria has actually just touched on something I wanted to say. When one is telling a story and it's a new story, when you are at a storytelling club, you know the people. You can get feedback from them. There are very, very few places where a lot of people feel comfortable telling a story that they are aware they haven't quite finished, but it needs to be told in public so that you get the feedback, so that you know what to do with it. And that is missing at the moment. I know there are workshops, I know that but we used to in Lichfield have a story circle, and we would, these are people who may or may not be storytellers, and they come together and they contribute. You bring your story, you bring the bones and a little bit of flesh, and then they put the muscles in it so that it works. There's nothing like that now. And Kath Edwards did ask me if I wanted to put that online, but it just so happened it was at a time when my life was wasn't settled. There were a lot of things happening, and I could not possibly take it on and make a proper go of it. And I don't think it's an easy thing to do online. I haven't seen anything like it, but I do thank the storytelling clubs for having open mic evenings. And maybe we will make mistakes, but maybe the mistakes could be recorded. Why if the teller doesn't mind? I've seen my mistakes online and I cringe. So I just wanted to say thank you for letting us have open mic evenings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, as well as a teller, you have been a regular audience all over the place. So have you got anything you want to say?
Yeah, I've only, up until this last year, I've only ever been a local storyteller, and suddenly the world has opened up. And what Janet was saying, I get a lot of that from Eric Miller out in Chennai. He runs, effectively, you tell a story and everyone else discusses it and asks you questions, and it's really helpful in developing a story in much the way I guess a real local story club would be. But I've just loved this year. I mean, it's awful about COVID, but you know, I've never before been able to tell stories in India and Australia and America, Canada, and in the summer to be able to not only go to Edinburgh and see the Scottish Storytelling Centre there, but also go to the Settle Festival, the Yorkshire Festival of Story, and go down to Devon and Cornwall to story festivals there, as well as America and Canada. It's been absolutely fabulous. And you know, this week I'm telling stories on Radio Berkshire and Radio Oxfordshire, which last year wouldn't have crossed my mind, but because it's all online, they've seen stuff and said, will you come on and tell a story? So I think in terms of developing storytellers, this has been an absolutely great year. And, you know, it's wonderful to go on and see proper storytellers, where perhaps if I, normally in the summer we go to Edinburgh and you might see a couple of storytellers because there's so many other things that you have to do as well. Whereas this year we were able to, you know, have a fabulous summer of storytelling. I don't know if people agree with that or if that's just me, but perhaps I'm just selfish.
I'd like to say something, Mike, about that, because it has been great actually connecting around the world. And one of the things that I'm missing traveling terribly. However, I also see now that, you know, because I'm very conscious about what we do to the environment, that perhaps we have reduced emissions, haven't we, by being able to be online and connecting in this way. You can go to Texas, you know, and connect. And I think that is one of the things that I would like to keep hold of, that we still maintain these friendships that we're creating. And as much as you know, I will travel, it is possible now to be able to get together, you know, and not fly to Australia necessarily. Do you know what I mean? That makes me feel a bit better, actually.
Yeah, and it opens up. You know, if you're booking people internationally, you have to book names to attract an audience to pay for their plane fare. But this way, it has opened up things enormously. If there's Peter Monk is just joining us as we're finishing. Hello, Peter. Talking about catch up, you see, the advantage for Peter is that he can see what everyone has said, just as I'm about to say goodbye. Peter, while you're on, but we can't hear a word you're saying. It's good to see your face. Just maybe a final comment from you, as you've just arrived. The person to arrive, I think, at the last moment should have the last say. So, how important have the Zoom clubs been to you in, you know, through this pandemic? Got it. That is a perfect comment to finish with, right? So, if no one else wants to say anything, Alan, have you got anything? You put a bit in the chat. Keith, you've not said anything, but I thank you all for coming. Thank you especially to the heroes that we've had on today that have managed to take their clubs and keep them going through this fantastic, you know, this amazing bit of history. I think a round of applause for all the people who run the clubs. Thank you. And we'll let Ali get a bit of rest. Thank you for driving the bus every week, Ali.
You're welcome, John.
Thank you.
But of course, the other thing is, I mean, it's just great, you know, kind of the World Storytelling Cafe wouldn't have happened without this year as well, which has been a real connector for all of us who are here and kind of a network out to all of those other places, which has just been fantastic. And long may it continue, whatever happens in the wider world.
Yes,
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yes, well, we will, when it's going in its physical state down in Marrakesh, there will be a big screen in, so we're going to mix physical telling and online telling, so people can come to Marrakesh but also the Marrakesh storytellers can connect with the world, and whoever has come to us in you know, they're passing, you know, because Marrakesh is on a route that people want to go to anyway. So pop into the cafe, tell a tale when we're going, and we'll see you all there. Until then, we'll continue seeing you online. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Right.
Good night.
Keith.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.